our Senior Training Coordinator at the Institute for Security Studies, Willem Els, now joins us via video link to unpack further. Willem, good afternoon. Thanks for your time on the SABC at this hour.
Lisa.
Willem, talk to us about human trafficking in South Africa and how rampant this is.
Liesel, unfortunately, South Africa has been a target both in terms of internal trafficking, but also in terms of regional, sub-regional, as well as international trafficking. Now, if we look at the Transnational Organized Crime Index, we look at the indicators there. The first one that put us right up there with the rest of the world, above the rest of the world, almost at number 5, is our financial crimes. But the second one is human trafficking. And that just gives us an indication of how rampant that is in South Africa.
Willem, thank you for giving us that context, because now it's alleged that the victims were promised jobs in South Africa. Let's focus on this. It happens not only in South Africa, but obviously in other countries as well. Talk us through how these operations unfold.
Okay, yeah. In South Africa, the rural areas are being targeted, where the poor people are. They are being lured into our city areas, where traditionally some of them with promises of marriage, promises of job opportunities, and then they are being exploited in the cities, either in the sex industry or in the domestic services where they are being exploited. But if we look at the region, some of them are being trafficked here for sex trafficking, some women and children, and we see that some of the Nigerian syndicates even target children as young as 10 years old when it comes to sex trafficking. So then they traffic them to South Africa to work in brothels. That is disguised normally as guest houses. We see that another South African or Southern African country that is being targeted extensively is Lesotho, where women are being trafficked towards the Gauteng area for sex trafficking. But what we saw also now with the syndicate that have been arrested from trafficking people from women, especially from India. We also in the past had some traffickers that operated from as far afield as Bangladesh, China, as well as Pakistan, where these people are being trafficked for various reasons. We also see that people from South Africans are being trafficked out of South Africa towards Europe, for instance, by drug traffickers, but also on syndicates, but also for domestic services. When they get there, they are then exploited and their passports taken away and they're taken control of by these syndicates.
Willem, you've spoken about the industries affected by human trafficking and perhaps also just some of the common forms of human trafficking in South Africa particular. Have we identified who the traffickers are as well?
Yeah, traditionally that is some of your syndicates. We see that especially in terms of recent reports, your Nigerian syndicates are very active in South Africa. They of course they've got their tentacles into various other forms of organized crime, especially the drug trade, and they go hand in hand. We also see that these syndicates bring in people. Some of them from countries like, for instance, Ethiopia. They are smuggling the people here with the promises of work. So it starts off as a smuggling operation where these people come willingly, and they are being transported to South Africa with promises of jobs and relocation. And once they get into South Africa, they are then being targeted by the traffickers, and they are being exploited by them. Another phenomenon that we also see in terms in the labor sector, on the farming sector, for instance, during harvest times, you've got your bakkie brokers that they call them. They then pitch up at the farms and they come and they offer services to these farmers when there's a high demand for workers over that harvesting period, for instance. And most of those people, many of those people that are then in service of these bakkie brokers are exploited people that have been trafficked to South Africa.
Willem, for clarity's sake, what's the difference between human trafficking and migrant smuggling? And if we're looking at the law enforcement agencies of government, what's their role? How do they guard against such cases? How effective are they as well?
Okay, in the first place, you have to distinguish between the two. A person that is being human trafficked, that person is lured towards, for instance, South Africa with a promise of a lot of jobs, with promises of marriage, etc., under false pretenses. The moment they arrive in South Africa, then their passports are confiscated. They are being taken control of. If they are forced into, for instance, the sex industry, they are being made dependent on drugs. And in that way, the syndicates can control them. What we also see in the past was, for instance, from the Ukraine. That's also a vulnerable country in terms of smuggling, of trafficking of people. Some of the young women are being promised work and in for instance Europe or in the United States, but they end up in West Africa where they have to work as sex workers. So they are being exploited and trafficked for that specific purpose. What we see because of the dire situations in some countries like Ethiopia, country in conflict, a lot of discrimination against certain ethnic groups, etc. A lot of those people then are looking for better opportunities, and then they want to move to South Africa or to Europe in order to escape their dire circumstances, and then they actually pay these people, these traffickers, to ferry them to South Africa, and those are the people that are being smuggled. So they are being smuggled across the border. When they come to South Africa, and that is one of our major challenges, you know, they have to cross most of our neighboring countries, they have to cross borders there, so they pay their way through all of these borders, and especially in South Africa. We saw that last year alone, 22 immigration officials have been arrested for corruption when it comes to human smuggling and trafficking. So that is one of our major challenges. Another challenge that we also have, Liesl, is that, SADC itself, all the countries in SADC adopted the United Nations Convention against transnational organized crime, where it specifically also targets vulnerable people like women and children in trafficking. But also SADC went further, and in 2002 it adopted a protocol to prevent and suppress and punish trafficking in persons, and 13 of the 15 countries have ratified that. So that indicates to you that there is a political will, there is a will in the region to address the challenges. South Africa has got a problem because we did push through a new legislation as to really address especially this trafficking. They then started, and the minister worked very hard to get the regulations in place. Those regulations are now back in Parliament. So we believe that once those regulations are in place, and we can use the new legislation together with the transnational organized crime or the organized crime legislation, it will provide the necessary tools to law enforcement to really get the act together. Another thing, Liesl, that is very promising, and we have to give praise where it's due. We saw that in the recent arrests that have been made with the Indian syndicate, we see that there was extensive collaboration between the private sector, between private security companies and the police, and that is one of the main reasons for these successes. And we want to commend the police for doing that. We want to commend the private sector for also joining hands with the police, because that is the only way that we are going to be able to address the situation that is really getting out of hand.
Well, Willem, thank you very much for joining us on the SABC at this hour and for weighing in. We're shining a spotlight on human trafficking syndicates in Johannesburg. Willem Els is from the Institute for Security Studies, weighing in on that conversation.